Hey gang, sit on in the cursed dentist chair slash cuck chair, however your vibes are in your back room. We are talking about Archon Shards today. Archon Shards aren't really the strongest single addition to any build, but when incorporated into a build properly, make the build feel so much better, whether that's through stronger quality of life, hitting certain thresholds, modding room, all the above, right? So today I'm providing you with two things, a vibes-based tier list and a numerically supported analysis on each shard as well. The tier list is mostly for clicks because I got bills to pay. Hopefully you guys can respect that. But the analysis has some pretty good stuff there to look into. The tier list focuses on the strongest parts of each shard while kind of ignoring the weaker components, because that's how they kind of work in a practical sense, in a surface level sense. But the proper numerical analysis aims to kind of provide a more holistic perspective. All Archon shards can add a lot to a build, but some are much more useful right off the bat or more versatile than others. The vibes-based tier list, again, we're looking at the perspective from someone who's trying to build their account to try shards on many new frames, coming home from their 9 to 5 to play EDA, ETA, Netrocells, whatever, in hopes that their time investment will pay off. All shards have a niche, but shards are very limited, they're very time-gated, RNG, all that good stuff. So, versatility has a lot more weight here because you can only get so many in a week. Something to keep in mind with a lot of these shards, you really want them to be able to do like kind of one of two things. Either replace a mod slot, or potentially two even. Mods are how we become really strong, so if you open up a mod slot, that means you could put a different mod in, and that is incredibly valuable. Or provide a feature or buff that mods cannot, which we'll talk about both of those. Another third role is kind of like to enable an arcane or mod or ability, even niche ability, to do more, which like we'll describe when we get there. Stuff like if you have an equilibrium shard with Lycath's Hunt, or if you're using armor shards with arcane persistence for certain thresholds, primed flow, purple shards. We'll talk about it all in a second, but just understand for the analysis, the numerical one, each shard is getting graded on each one of their stats, while the vibes-based tier list focuses on their strongest ones, as that's a more surface level approach. And in the numerical analysis, I'm also going to be providing a coalescence grade, which has to do with an Archon shard's kind of value in relation to other shards in a vacuum within one account. So keep that in mind. Thank you guys for the subs, likes. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the Banshee guide. I know that's a little bit more of a niche video, but you guys wanted it and I wanted to give it to you. So thank you a ton. Love you guys lots. Like, sub, all that crap if you want more. Let's get into it. Let's start where most people would want to start here, and that's in the Crimson Archon Shard, or the Red Shard as most people call it. Also, do keep in mind that most of these shards just have simple 1.5x modifiers for their Tau Forged variants, and usually it doesn't play a massive role. Tau Forged is going to be best in slot. When we get to green shards, there will be a minor discussion there, but nothing too crazy. So, in the vibes-based tier list, of course, we're going to pop the Crimson or Red Archon Shard into S tier. Ability duration is an insanely high quality of life tool. Feels really great. Ability strength, again, this can be more damage. I'm talking about these three stats here relative to ability strength because I think it's important. Ability strength usually allows you to multiply on top of multipliers, right? So like if you have an ability that buffs your crit chance, crit damage, whatever, ability strength allows you to buff more of your damage than any one of these three stats here generally. I can see a place where primary status chance could have some value, but generally speaking, you're going to be taking the red shard for the ability duration, which can sometimes translate into damage actually, but usually just translates into quality of life, and ability strength, which will help you hit certain thresholds. If you're like a frame who just wants a little bit of strength, 1 to 2, maybe 3 Tau Forged Reds, and you are all set for strength, and you can put the rest into range or whatever. Maybe you're trying to compensate for an overextended, or you just want as much damage as humanly possible. You want a full strip with pillage, whatever. The red shard gets it done. It is incredibly good. So yeah, S tier on the vibes based. But if we're looking at a holistic numerical analysis here, with the math, basically what we're doing is a out of 5 grading for each stat here, along with a coalescent value out of 5, and then we have a total that comes together with a whole, and then we do fraction math and we get a final score. So looking at the math here, plus 25% melee critical damage, of course Tau Forged, ignore that, just ignore it. And the melee critical damage, this is not a bad stat. I've given it a 3 out of 5. The purple shard, which we'll talk about in a moment, just is a straight upgrade with a very simple conditional. So while this is a valuable stat, Melee critical damage is especially good. Wrathful Advance gives much critical chance, so the ability to match a healthy crit ratio is really important. But the Purple Shard does it better. We'll talk about that in a moment. Primary status chance, I've also elected to give a 3 out of 5. I think it can make really strong builds stronger. And getting status chance can sometimes be difficult, but a lot of the times, weapons that rely on that status chance will have enough of it to already melt through stuff because it's already kind of their innate strength. Adding more compared to like adding ability strength or adding a different shard of a different kind, it's not nearly as good. But I think that like this is a pretty good stat, especially if you're building towards it, but it does have to be very intentional. Secondary critical chance, I've given a 2 out of 5. Honestly, there's versions of the script where I say 1 out of 5. Secondary critical chance has become less and less of a useful stat as secondary innervate has become popular. Pistol Gambit already gives a ton of value. Another shard does it better as well. So really 1 out of 5 should be here, but I feel like that's a little bit harsh because it's still an okay stat buff, especially if you don't want to use innervate. So yeah, I think 2 out of 5 here is totally appropriate. There's just better crit options in the game. Ability strength, I've given a 5 out of 5. Very obviously, more strength, easier thresholds. You know, ability strength is not just a weapon stat. It can lead to things like roar, eclipse, all sorts of things that buff, you know, whatever. Even most frames have a way to buff either your ability or weapon damage. So ability strength allows you to multiply on top of your multipliers, and that's always going to be a good thing. And the ability duration, I've given a 4 out of 5. I think it's completely good. It can lead to damage. It's usually just QOL, but what you have to measure the Crimson Archon Shard especially is measured by its ability to replace mods, and oh my goodness, it probably is the best in the entire game out of all these shards at simply replacing a mod slot and giving yourself a mod slot to do something more creative with. You know, two Tau Forged Reds is a intensify. 2 Tau Forged Reds is a continuity. 3 is almost a primed continuity. It's really that simple. It's super easy to get a mod slot back using red shards. And the coalescent value I've placed here is a 5 out of 5. The Topaz shard, which it makes, is not very good, so it's easy to keep, but it also makes a purple shard, which the purple shard has, you know, direct upgrades essentially, along with just being a net very good shard. So I've given its coalescent value a 5 out of 5. It's easy to keep, but also absolutely easy to turn into something stronger while not feeling like you've sacrificed too much, because the Topaz is kind of whatever. Overall, this leads to a 3 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5, and 5 out of 5, leading to a 22 out of 30, meaning a 73 final score. Moving on to the Amber Shard, or the Yellow Shard as I call it. On the vibes-based tier list, based on the strongest traits it has, it's going in S as well. This is purely carried by casting speed and parkour velocity. These two shards should be government mandated in almost every single Warframe you build. Those two stats are stats not easily provided by mods, not even easily provided by some abilities or weapons, right? Like these are the real deal in terms of quality of life stats. And we're just going to lead off the numerical analysis now with that similar sentiment. Casting speed and parkour velocity both score 5 out of 5. The amount of pure quality of life you get, moving through missions faster, casting abilities faster, everything feels better, everything feels cleaner. Getting your first Amber or Yellow Archon Shard is one of the best feelings in the whole wide world. These things should be government mandated, effective immediately. Yeah, just insanely strong. We're talking effectiveness on energy orbs. I've elected to give it a 2 out of 5. It's just not that great. If you're having energy issues, this is like half of a band-aid. It's just not great. There's better solutions for energy economy, and using up a shard slot for it just is not great. For the double effectiveness, or I guess with Tau Forge to be 150% effectiveness on health orbs, I've given them 1 out of 5. Health orbs don't need any help. They are one of the best sources of a lot of things in this game. Healing, armor, just everything. Energy because of equilibrium and stuff like that. So yeah, even needing effectiveness on the health orbs is just not needed. I'm sure there's some situations where that could be good, but not enough that I can't really conceive any. So 1 out of 5 on that, which is going to tank the numerical value of this one quite a bit. But again, that's why we're doing the vibes based and the numerical analysis as well. Both don't tell the full story. We have to use both of them kind of side by side. And plus 30% maximum energy is fill and spawn. This one I think is quite underrated. I'll give it a 3 out of 5. If you have a Warframe that really needs some rev up time, this is really nice. It also means you can slot this in instead of preparation. If you are a primed sure-footed user, that means that you can kind of trade it off. For me, this my personal rating of this one is probably more of a 2 out of 5 because I refuse to use PSF. But if you're a PSF user, for example, your Mirage Icarius build or whatever, but you want to have enough energy to rev up the build, plus 30% maximum energy filled on spawn is quite good. So if we look at the math here, we have a 5 out of 5, a 5 out of 5, a 1 out of 5, a 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5, and then the coalescent value I've given a 4 out of 5. This makes topaz as well, so it's easy to keep, but it makes green, which is nowhere near as good as purple, but still like a pretty decent shard, all things considered. This leads to a 20 out of 30, which leads to a 66 final grade for the Amber Archon Shard. Moving on to blue. I also had this idea where I switched the frames out. I only had that idea just now and I already recorded, so yeah, you're getting my Wukong fashion frame now. Anyway, blue in the vibes based is, unfortunately, it's gonna go down from S, but it's going into A. I think once we go, it's the energy max is really valuable. Stuff with persistence, it's okay. I really honestly wanted to jam it into B, and you probably could make the case for it. It goes between, but what carries this shard is its coalescence. It turns into 2 really good shards, and because this shard stinks, you feel so much better coughing it up. So yeah, the coalescence grade, I guess I'll spoil it, is a 5 out of 5 for the blue shard, very obviously. But let's move down the actual stats now in our numerical ranking with A tier for vibes based. So 150 health, just 2 out of 5, not particularly useful. It can help with persistent stuff. But most kits that use persistence, health is not the issue, it's usually armor. So that's where armor comes in, and the armor is pretty okay, 3 out of 5. Again, this is mainly persistent stuff, but base armor is good because it means that frames with lower base armor can utilize things like persistence or more armor synergies, which I think is like really good for the game. For the record, I think, Banshee with 135 base armor or whatever, not that you'd ever want to use persistence, but it's nice that frames with lower armor can gain a flat value as opposed to relying on the multiplicative things like steel fiber, multiplicative mods. Shield capacity is 2 out of 5. Expertise makes it like pretty redundant. Most frames that are doing shield stuff will end up using expertise, which gives you shield based on your power strength, which means in this place, again, you just run the red for the strength with expertise. It's very unlikely that you will have any use for this one, but 2 out of 5 because it still technically does something. It gives your blue something to do. Not bad at all. 5 HP per second, I've given it a 1 out of 5. There's too many health orbs in the game. There's a ton of healing in the game. It's very unlikely that your health is going to take any damage, and if it does take damage, it's either going to get healed right away or you will perish effective immediately. All right, so this stat's just not very useful. I do run like 2 of them on my Despoil Necros, as if there's another Necros build, but it's just not that great. But what is great is plus 50 energy max, or plus 75 with the Tau Forged. I love this stat to death. This could be all there was, and I'd be so happy. Energy max is good for caster frames. It can save a frame that has really bad base energy, just like with armor when I talked about it, right? Frames that have low base armor don't benefit from the multiplicative nature of something like primed flow, because it has a bad base value that gets multiplied. It's still kind of ass. But when you get flat energy, it is so much more comfortable. And again, this can also has the potential, if you are a frame who doesn't need that much energy but just wants a little bit more, it means you can save yourself the primed flow slot, which is absolutely massive. Saving modding space, again, is something we rate very highly. This can lead to a lot of comfort. Again, modding space, it means you can dump into other stats, so being able to drop flow if you decide to, or just have a more comfortable build. This is kind of where it's at. It being a flat value is incredibly useful. And again, I did mention that 5 out of 5 coalescence value, this makes, in my opinion, the best shard in the game, which is purples, and then greens, which are very also, quite useful as well. While blues also are super easy to just cough up. I'd feed them to the helmet, every day if I could. Hey guys, this is Turbo Monk's indentured servant in the editing room. He messed up some of the math on the blue shard, so I'm just gonna fix it in post. The text will be correct, the audio will not be. Oh, he's gonna kill me. So if we're talking about a rating, however, in terms of numerical, we have a 2 out of 5, a 2 out of 5, a 4 out of 5, a 3 out of 5, a 1 out of 5, and a coalescence value of 5 out of 5. This leads to 19 out of 30 with a 63 final grade. Starting with the Goth, and that's our lean green fighting machine, the Emerald Archon Shard, or green as I call it. And for the vibes based, I'm gonna pop it in the A tier. I think that's totally fair. You could earn a spot in B for sure, but I think that the solid value it provides in just like damage, it's got 2 really good damage options, along with its unique, very unique corrosive status proc increase max, max increase, which I think is like incredibly valuable. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I think A tier is totally fair, but I also do think B tier is totally fair as well. It's more about the uniqueness here that carries it in the vibe department. But when we're talking numerical, we're starting with a 3 out of 5 for toxin status effects, deal plus 30% more damage. This is a fairly substantial damage increase in my opinion. The problem is that the meta, it doesn't really lean towards toxin. Usually we're using things like heat and electricity. If your frame has it built in, Noko, Grendel, Saren, I believe, benefits from this quite a bit, if I recall correctly. This is a substantial amount of damage, but it is quite niche, which is going to be a pattern coming in here. But this is any toxin status effect, so it's a lot more versatile than some of the more niche ones here, but still exists within its niche. 3 out of 5 I think is totally fair, but especially when Tau Forged, this is a substantial damage increase. I believe I have 3 or 4 of these equipped on Noko. Recover plus 2 health each time enemies are damaged by a toxin status effect. If I could give out a 0 out of 5, I probably would. But yeah, this one's shockingly bad. We have 5 up to 7.5 HP per second on a blue shard, which is used to make this, and instead this is plus 2. Now, granted, that's like an insane amount of healing for the record. I will say that. But the problem is, again, toxin status effect, we don't really build towards that often. I'm sure some guy in my comments is going to be like, I actually built the craziest health tank build in the world using this Archon Shard. And I'm sure you did, man. But there's just better ways to do it. 1 out of 5, in my opinion. I'm sure it has niche applications, but all of these do. We are rating on the ability to be versatile here. Gain plus 10% ability damage on enemies affected by corrosive status. This one, and there are actually 3 others on this list that operate like this, is a 3 out of 5. I think it's quite good. Corrosive status is a status you're going to want to be proccing on a good portion of weapons in the game. Bonus ability damage feels nice. It's pretty good, especially if you're doing stuff like Varuna uses this just to help with the ability damage for her nuking. This is a pretty good approach, I'd say. Again, it still applies in a niche where it's like, okay, I want to invest in ability damage, but I'm also proccing corrosive. It's not bad at all, but I think 3 out of 5 is a totally fine. You have to be very intentional about how you use this shard in general. Speaking of intentional, increase max stacks of corrosive status by plus 2. This one is pretty good. I think it's either a 4 out of 5 or, yeah, I would say 4 out of 5. It's not as valuable as before the armor changes, but it's still very good. The single Tau, I think, gets you down to 96 or 97, maybe 98% armor strip, which I think is annoying. I do think the Tau should bring you to plus 4 and bring you to a full strip. I think it's really annoying that you have to fight for shard real estate like that. But just a personal opinion, that's the only Tau conversation we're really going to have here. But yes, the ability to get a full strip with 2 of these regular ones, or damn near a full strip with just a Tau. Again, for me, it's more like the OCD. I really want to have the enemy full strip, so I'm maximizing my DPS, type thing. But I do get it. Ultimately, it's a 4 out of 5 for this. I think it's really, really strong. I think it's really fun, and it gives you more options to full strip enemies, even though it's less necessary nowadays. I think that option being there is still super, super awesome, and it does buff some builds more than you would think. So we're talking the Emerald rating here on a numeric scale with a 3 out of 5, a 1 out of 5, a 3 out of 5, a 4 out of 5, and a coalescent grade of 3 out of 5. Pretty average. Losing the yellow sucks, but again, losing a blue here is pretty fine. So 4 or 3. I have a 3 written down here, leading to a 14 out of 25 score, which is a 56 final grade for the green Archon Shard, or Emerald, or whatever. Here with Styanax and my Topaz, or Orange as I call it, shard, for my vibe space ranking, I'm gonna give it the B. Yeah, this shard's not that great in my opinion. It's a lot of it, again, similar to the blue. What put the blue in A puts this one in B for the most part for me. Having to eat my reds and yellows is not good. I don't like that. I don't want to lose those. And that's honestly, this shard, while being it's just not even that bad as people make it out to be, even though I think it is the worst shard. Even Coalescence aside, I think it's the worst shard. But I think the fact that it wants your reds and your yellows, the two best shards in the game, in my view, especially, you know, maybe purple we'll talk about in a moment. But anyway, yeah, vibes based B for sure. But when we're talking numerical, let's start with that. So gain 1 max health per enemy killed with blast damage, max 300. This will max out at 450, assuming Tau Forge status. So that's actually a lot of health. 2, 3 of these, even 1 of these, that's a good amount of health, and that's important for some thresholds. If you're doing persistent stuff, whatever, this has a place. But I still think, even though it's a straight upgrade to the blue version, it being on a Topaz shard, like that, it's, I think 2 out of 5, maybe 3 out of 5 is debatable here. I would say 2 out of 5. Just health is usually not that valuable, and usually frames that want health have better ways to get it, usually better base values, you know, so they would benefit more from modding as opposed to this thing's flat value. Though the flat value is quite high, but you also have to ramp this as well with a conditional. That's the big part that keeps it out of the 3 out of 5 for me, is the condition of blast damage. Not that blast damage is inaccessible, it's not, but it's not quite accessible. Accessible enough to throw onto something and call it versatile. I don't really believe in that. And same goes with this, except the condition is a whole lot better. Or not, the condition is not better. The outcome is a lot better. Regenerate +5 shields when you kill an enemy with blast damage. With Steel Path enemy density, that is an insane amount of shields. If you're cheesing with something like Aegis, Fast Deflection, Arcane Aegis, or Vigilante Vigor rather, like this is actually a lot of shields, and this can keep you very, very alive for much longer than you think you would, especially with just even 1 of them, 2 of them, whatever. You know, assuming Tau Forge status, this can get really good. Rack to Dark Dagger, like this is actually quite a lot of survivability put into 1 shard. Again, it is the blast damage conditional, but the effect is a lot better. I think this is what the green recover +2 health each time enemies damaged by a toxin status effect. I think that's what this is trying to be. And yeah, the blast damage conditional is rough, but if you play towards it, you get survivability, like meaningful survivability. I don't think that the max health here is meaningful survivability in most cases, while regenerating the +5 shields, or +7.5 with Tau Forged, actually can lead to some pretty serious mileage. Speaking of serious mileage, 4 out of 5. For increased secondary critical chance by 1% every time you kill an enemy affected by heat status. Heat status is a much easier conditional to get, and it works so well on secondaries. Most secondaries, meta ones, use the heat status. It's very popular. So many weapons use heat status, right? It's not just Mesa regulators with heat. No, like this is like a seriously easily stackable. To call it a conditional would almost be misleading. 1 weapon in your arsenal is gonna use heat status, right? Like your companion, your Verglass, probably uses heat. This is the easiest thing to stack. The conditional is not a problem. It's more the time it can take to stack it. But that's what keeps it at a 5 out of 5 for me. But keep this in mind as well. When you equip the shard, you know you have to stack it. So you're not going to put this on your elimination or extermination Mirage Icarius setup, right? You're going to put this on a Mesa build or whatever build that lets you chill out maybe for 20, 30 minutes, couple hours in a survival, and hang out with the bros. Like that's it. That's why you use a shard like this. So you're equipping it knowing you have to stack it. I don't consider that a real substantial downside. I consider it an intentional decision. But I'll say 4 out of 5 for that. And this one is similar to its green counterpart. Gain 10% ability damage on enemies affected by radiation. Radiation isn't really a great status effect compared to corrosive, but I think that like it's an easy enough condition to get like more ability damage, whatever. So 3 out of 5, like its cousin, I think is totally fair here. A lot of frames also do radiation damage really well. I think that's for me what switches it up a bit. Like corrosive is on like you're not really nuking with corrosive abilities for the most part, as far as I'm concerned. It can help with like Saren and stuff. Tempest Barrage can be pretty good with it, but I think like a frame like Oberon or Corvex, like this gets like to some serious shit and becomes a lot stronger. So that's where its 3 out of 5 comes from. Even though it's a less net useful status, the frames that can utilize it incredibly well. I like it a lot. Coalescent value for the Topaz is a 1 out of 5, as you would expect. So when we're talking numerics here, again, sacrificing the red, yellow, that is not worth it. If you get your Topaz, God willing, you get it from just the drop, as opposed to having to coalesce them together. So we get a 2 out of 5, a 3 out of 5, a 4 out of 5, a 3 out of 5, and a 1 out of 5 for coalescent value. Did I say that right? I think I did. Anyway. Oh, that's right. These only have 4. I totally forgot. That leads to a 13 out of 25, 52 final score. Lastly, we have the Violet Archon Shard with my girl Citrine. Unfortunately, a lot of my cool purple frames already have a bunch of shards put in. And I'm a small budget YouTuber. I don't have the budget to take my shards in and put them back, or take them out, put them, whatever. Anyway, vibes based for the Violet or Purple is an obvious S. This is a really good shard with a lot of value. Consumes a red, but also a blue, which is easy to give up, puts it smack dab in the middle of coalescent value. And yeah, Violet's probably the best shard in the game, although I do usually opt to reserve that title for red and yellow because they are the primary color shards, and just therefore much more accessible. So if we're talking net best, it's probably the red and the yellow, but the violet one provides immense value, especially when properly invested in. So let's get to the numerical analysis, but S tier for vibes. So gain plus 10% ability damage on enemies affected by electricity status. This, like its other cousins, is just going to be the 3 out of 5. Now, this is probably the best status out of all of these. But again, it's just ability damage. It's the same amount of ability damage. All those elements, in my opinion, radiation, corrosive, electricity, are all pretty equally accessible. It's not like having more stacks means anything. So yeah, I think 3 out of 5 is totally fair here. Electricity status already being used for a lot of builds that deal with status stuff. Frames having electricity status built in. I think it's kind of a, it's a triangle of balance. All 3 of those I think are pretty good, and a 3 out of 5 I think is totally fair. This one plus 30% primary electricity damage, and then you gain an additional 10% per blue, red, or another violet shard equipped. This can lead to some of the most stupid damage in the entire game. This is a lot of damage. I'm not doing the math, but I think it's like 525% extra primary electricity damage. The only problem is that the electricity will combine with mods, but if you're just good at modding and or using a weapon that benefits from the kind of what electricity brings to the table, yeah, this is a 4 out of 5, maybe even a 5 out of 5. The only problem is that, of course, the electricity combined with mods is a bit annoying, and also it's only at primaries. But this one, a 4 out of 5, seems totally fair. Of course, this does kind of mean that taking a yellow shard, which is usually you really want, it's like semi-suboptimal, but that's totally up to you. So I think a 4 out of 5 is totally fair here, but this leads to so much damage if you mod for it properly. Speaking of so much damage, this little shard here is responsible for so much clickbait. The gain plus 25% melee critical damage when max energy is over 500. The damage boost doubles. We talked about the critical damage on the red shard. This is where it gets doubled, and you might be saying, "Oh, it's conditional." The conditional for this is a joke. A lot of frames are going to want over 500 max energy. Like, it is so much damage. It is without Tau Forged. That is a 50% melee critical damage boost for one single shard. That is so much damage. That is kind of that third thing I was talking about with Archon Shards providing value. It turns primed flow from a quality of life, generally a mod, sometimes a necessity with some frames, it turns primed flow into a damage source. How insane is that? This is incredibly good. Leads to a ridiculous amount of damage. It's just 5 out of 5. There's no debate about it. Melee critical damage is a really strong stat. You always want more of, especially again with what's it called, Wrathful Advance in the game, giving a bunch of crit chance. It lets you balance that ratio really well. And then this is the Equilibrium Shard, this is my single favorite buff in the game right here. Health pickups give plus 20% energy. Energy pickups give plus 20% health. This is Equilibrium Light, Baby Equilibrium, whatever you want to call it. This shard does everything. It gives you the free slot for Equilibrium. Equilibrium is a really good energy econ solution, but that's a mod slot, and you usually don't need the entire thing, right? That Equilibrium is really strong, gives a ton of energy, but you usually don't need that much. So having the 30%, which is the Tau Forged value, or even a 60% for 2 Tau Forged if you really feel like you need it, is insane value. Health orbs are just so plentiful. It's so good. This single shard can fix your energy economy in a lot of cases. It's really strong. That gives you a mod slot. Equilibrium is completely unique in what it does, and so the Violet Archon Shard adding to that, something that again mods Equilibrium is kind of overkill. That takes the mod slot. So yes, this single shard, maybe even 2 of them, will fix your energy economy with little to no effort. Especially if you even remotely build towards health pickups, health orbs. Yeah, infinite energy econ. Congratulations, he did it. That's a 5 out of 5 easily. The coalescent value is 3 out of 5. Losing a red sucks, but losing a blue is fine, which is pretty run of the mill for what I've been grading here. So for the Violet Archon Shards grades, we have that 3 out of 5 coalescent value, 3 out of 5 here, 4 out of 5 here, 5 out of 5 here, 5 out of 5 here. This leads to a 19 out of 25, a 76% final grade. So looking at our vibes-based scores here, along with the numerical ones, I guess, we'll do it that way. That leaves the Crimson Red with an S tier and a 73 grade. The Yellow Shard with a S tier and a 66 grade. The Blue Shard ends up in A tier with a 63 grade. Emerald Shard, A tier, 56 grade. Topaz or Orange in B tier with a 52 grade. And the Violet or Purple Shard in S tier with a 76 grade. So you'll notice that obviously these two, I'm not just doing two systems for fun, for the bit. I am doing it because they do measure different kind of qualities, right? The vibes-based one kind of ignores the bad stats because in practicality, in a practical situation, surface level, you never have to engage with the bad stats. You can just equip the good stuff, right? But the numerical sense, the more holistic approach kind of takes a look at, well, how much, I just invested an hour, 2 hours maybe out of my day to try to get these Archon Shards, like how much cool stuff can I do with them? And I think that that's also a very valid metric to take a look at. So I've done both of them for you today. Hopefully you guys found this one informational, entertaining, informational, fun to watch. Love you guys so much. Thank you for the hype, subs, likes, everything. Hopefully you thought this was cool. Leave, questions in the comment, whatever. I'm thinking of doing a Q&A series. So if you do have any questions, pop them in the comments. Any comments in the video, let me know. So much love for you guys. Hopefully you're doing well. Stay safe out there. Weather's kind of crazy. And I'll talk to you next week. Much love. Bye-bye.